Today on the Self Smarter podcast.
A healthy culture is the number one thing that I care about relative to this business. And the reason why is because I don't want to be an owner or leader of a company where people aren't fully, couldn't grow and be a better version of themselves.
Sure.
Period.
Yeah.
I did not want to be in that position. I want people to want to be here because they see themselves as being part of something greater than themselves, first and foremost, and a place that they can come and do a meaningful work and grow and be better in every sense of themselves. Hi, we're Danelle and Megan, the hosts of this conversation-centric podcast for leaders seeking to be better every day. Whether you choose to be a leader in the workplace, at home, or in your community, we believe the most effective leaders are equipped to not only be self-starters, but self-smarter.
Hello?
Hi.
Hi. It's episode 3.
Wow.
We're recording episode 3. And 2 days ago, our first episode launched. And we're getting all kinds of feedback.
We are.
From those that love us. And we are grateful for that. How are you feeling about all the feedback?
Whew, I'm feeling all the emotions. I like you, I'm so grateful for the support. And, the first episode, it really connected with a lot of people and exceeded expectations, namely ours. I don't know about you, but I waited to listen to the first episode because I wanted to listen to it as I do most podcasts. I'm either walking or I'm driving to the office. And so I listened to it on the way in, and it was surreal. It was very surreal. And then to receive the overwhelming amount of support and really people finding that they enjoy listening to us and that we have a good rhythm.
Yes.
And, we've been talking to each other for
For a while.
for a while now.
15 years.
So, but to think that
Just like this.
just like this, minus a few superlatives, but those will
Yes.
probably come out too.
Maybe.
But yeah, I think that the feedback, again, support was incredible, but also the feedback that we got to help us improve.
Yes. Yeah. In fact, funny feedback. Have to go funny.
Okay, good, funny.
I turns out I'm a feminist.
Oh,
Yes.
and we find that funny.
Well, what happened was
Okay,
I got a text from somebody, a very dedicated listener
okay.
who attends NYU. And she told me, I think you're a feminist. And I had forgotten that I had said that. But I've done some research. I am a feminist. I think I'm a feminist, and I think you are too.
Okay, so she was suggesting that you weren't clear in episode
Correct, I
1.
wasn't.
You weren't
I
clear.
listened to it multiple times.
Okay, so
wasn't.
she's suggesting that we both are, and wants to make that clear.
We got to be clear about it.
I gotta be clear
which
about it. Well-
I think is a good thing.
There's so many definitions out there of it, but if it boils down to are women equal to men, then yes, we are feminist, and so are most of the men we know.
Absolutely.
So, thanks for that feedback, NYU.
Yes. So for
Listener.
these two feminists, and thank you, NYU person, you know who you are, Mackie Payton. But before we move forward, I think it's important that we remind everybody who we are. And if this is their first time here, I am Megan, and this is my very wise friend, Danelle.
Hello, yes, I am Danelle, and I'm wise because I have on glasses.
Absolutely.
Good. All right, I'll take it.
Absolutely. And you're my mentor wearing glasses.
Oh, that was sweet. That's sweet of you to say. She must be wanting to spend some money a little bit later. All right, let's get back to the feedback. So I did want to note that a friend, an uber talented writer, one that I have mad respect for, which I hope she will be a guest on our podcast someday. She was happy to hear that we'll be focusing on leadership outside of the office as well. But she said it took us maybe a minute to make that point of clarification for our listeners. And what she ended up saying, which I absolutely appreciate so much, is that you are helping people be leaders of their life.
Yeah, that's really deep and absolutely what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's been our vision all along that we want this podcast to serve all kinds of leaders, and we want it to be about human things here on Self Smarter, and some of those things that we share in common, like emotions and triumphs and struggles and self-discovery and, some of the sticky stuff and some of the fabulous stuff. So, for the two of us, our journey began really our self-discovery at this level. I think, we've always been curious about being better as people, but I think where we got real intentional is when we were trying to become better leaders.
Yes.
So it happened with inside the business. So for our listeners, and everyone's new to the podcast, this is only episode 3, we do want you to know that our content and our intentions for future episodes is to span some business-centric topics, but also very personal topics as well, things that make us just better humans. We want to be better leaders of our lives. That does include work for some of us, and for some of us that includes community involvement, and for some of us that includes school, and the list goes on and on. So I just really appreciated her giving us that feedback and all the feedback that we've been getting. So thank you all.
Yes, thank you all. So for sure, I wanted to add to that too, that we hadn't even discussed or touched on, but parenting is a huge leadership role just by default. And so the lessons that we have learned here in the business place have absolutely, without a doubt, spilled over into our personal lives at home.
Sure.
Whether in marriages and with parents and with family members and especially with children. So very, very good feedback. And I know we're both grateful for it. So
I just noticed we're saying feedback a lot. So we could be, this could turn into a drinking game for our listeners, that if we keep saying that word.
Is that a dare? Yeah. Is that a dare? Are we going to get some wine in here, some shots?
Oh, wow.
Ooh, get crazy in the morning.
That's right.
All right. Well, it sounds like we're ready to get this party started. So I think it's important that we really talk about our 8-year remodeling project. That's what we're here to talk about today, this cultural remodel. And it's been 8 years.
I know. It's been a long road. And we've uncovered so much along the way, stuff that we've touched on both the previous episodes, but today I want to dive a little bit deeper and give people more insights into really how we shaped it. Because here's the thing, whether you're leading a culture or you're a part of a culture, which we all are, if we're part of any group, we're part of a culture.
Absolutely.
The things that we want to elevate and talk about today are things that we need to be aware of if we want to show up. If we want to remodel, if a culture needs to be worked on, for sure. But then also, if you're a part of one, you want to show up and be a positive part of that group. So that's what I'm excited to talk about today.
So we're getting into culture. Mm-hmm. And you recently shared a stat with me that actually surprised me, and I want to read it, and that's why I have on my glasses.
Okay.
It says only 15% of companies that embark on culture change are successful.
Yes.
That seems like a fairly small success rate. Why do you think that is?
It's the lack of understanding of what culture actually is, which we covered last week in episode 2 to a great deal. And it's hard to understand how to shape it or remodel it. And it certainly doesn't happen overnight. So I think that's another factor. I also think the success rate is low because leaders on this journey think that this is a start and complete. Like it's something you can work on or create, and then it's finished. And culture is anything but that, because it's mostly behavioral, and that's constantly evolving no matter the size of company or group. So I think those are the reasons why the success rate is so low and why it took us 8 years to get to this point, and it's still evolving. So that's why I believe the number's so low.
Yeah, and it's a monumental exercise. Monumental.
Yes.
So relative to our culture here, I think it's important to talk about a little bit. Mm-hmm. There were clearly cracks. Yeah. Cracks in our culture, cracks in the organization that awakened you to the fact that we had an issue. So how did you realize that? What was it that became abundantly clear that you saw?
So before I directly answer that, first of all, I didn't know what company culture was 8 years ago. So, but I could see red flags. Like I described in episode 1, we had all the indicators of a successful company. We'd made it to our 10th year successfully. We had a well-known, highly respected brand in the industry that we do serve. Mm-hmm. We had healthy financials, you name it. So, and the reasons for those success markers was because that's what we were focused on, being really good at marketing. And I wanted to be I wanted us to have a healthy business. So that's where our attention was spent. And at the same time, I started to realize we had, quote unquote, some people issues. And obviously that has started with me. The number one person that had some issues was the leader of the company. And so, again, by no means did we ignore the people part of our business, but we weren't focused on it the way we were the other areas. So for instance, we had a turnover issue. Mm-hmm. And just to clarify, marketing agencies, it's typical. The turn rate can run fairly high. And then you layer in, if you think about how our company being 18 years old, we've lived through the millennials joining the workforce. Mm-hmm. So, and they had a lot more of, they were a lot more,
prone,
perfect word, prone or willing to move jobs.
Try new things.
Try new things, exactly. And so it would have been easy to kind of write off turnover as being something that we should expect in marketing, we should expect from millennials. But I started to realize, and as did you, that they were leaving at the 2-year mark. So that was something was happening.
Right.
Were we not fully developing? Were we not training? It wasn't that all the millennials that worked here were just getting bored. There was a reason. And the reason why we knew that is because how they were leaving. And mm-hmm. it wasn't ideal. Mm-hmm. And we could tell that they were leaving for reasons other than their own interest in going to see if the grass was greener on the other side. So was definitely, and then of course there were other signs. And again, it all started with my shitty 26% approval rating. So, but yeah, that's really beyond the 26%. It was seeing that people were leaving and how they were doing it that really started to. We didn't want people to leave.
No.
After 2 years. We poured so much into them. And, but that was that indicator that I needed to see.
So once you got a handle on that, once you started to see these things and they were repetitive.
Yes.
That's an important thing.
Correct.
Chronic.
Yep.
Once you realized that, what was your first step towards the remodel?
Well, again, as we've covered quite extensively, my own journey of self-knowledge and really working on my communication skills because, and again, don't get me wrong, I can speak and talk to the cows come home.
Absolutely.
That's not an issue, but that didn't mean I was being effective. And I started to realize that we didn't have a common set of values and beliefs that guided us.
Okay. So I've been here for 15 years. Mm-hmm. And in my eyes, we've always had a stated purpose and vision and what we were trying to do here. So can you tell me a little bit more about what you mean?
Yeah, we had a clear purpose, a why, because I started the company very intentionally. I sold fresh produce. I was in sales for fresh produce for 10 years. And I could see that in that time period, I could see that marketing was what was missing. And so once the company that I worked for that I loved and then the big corporation bought us, I started to get restless about what could I go do in this industry that I loved that would be most helpful given my skill sets and the things that I knew. And I saw marketing. So again, very intentional about why I started the company. I saw marketing as the thing that the industry needed. So we've never lacked purpose. No. And then values, we had 2 quasi-core values and beliefs because they were innately mine. And that's common for founders to establish the values and the belief systems of the company, right? And so the first one was winning attitude. And again, major Zig Ziglar fan from high school and college. And I believe wholeheartedly, and it's actually written on our wall out there, that your altitude is determined by your attitude. So winning attitude was something we talked about a lot and something that we definitely incorporated. And the second was full effort. And I think just growing up in a rural town, growing up with values that 4-H help instill and that I could see the correlation between effort and success. So again, we had some tenets of the things that you're supposed to have, but what we were missing was the why behind the values. And so I began to observe our behaviors. And I didn't realize I was observing our culture, but I spent a good 2 years really looking at how we showed up. What were we like when we were at our best? What were we like when we were on the struggle bus? And so in that process, I started to really shape core values and vision for this company. So I think that, you know, if to answer your question, what do you mean, is we had some of those tenets, but they were not intentional. And so that's what I spent, time really digging into once I realized that I had a leadership and communication, work to do, and that we had some people issues.
So really from the catbird seat, your role, you kind of took yourself out in a way, and you looked at the business very differently. You looked at the way we behaved as a group and really examined and wrote down, literally recorded when we were doing things well.
Correct.
What did you discover during that process?
Well, the easy thing to discover is the great work that we were doing. Yeah. Again, we were being rewarded for it, and so there was a lot of greatness in the work that we were doing. And I also saw that we were weak in communication, and that started with me. And we relied so much on the work and doing the work and serving our clients that we forgot. I don't know that we forgot or that we ever realized how to navigate each other day to day.
It was lack of realization.
Lack of realization. Yes. And so we were in the grind. It was the hustle, and I think a lot of, no matter what your role is out there, I think people can relate to that.
Absolutely.
Like you're doing the thing that you need to do to keep the business going. And so, working on myself and started to shape the values, beliefs, and vision for the company. Doing that work, I started to get it started to become very clear to me that things were about to get sticky.
I think it's important you say sticky. You said sticky earlier. I just want to pause on that real quick because the word sticky is a common word used here at DMA.
Yes.
And really what it means is it didn't make Brené's Atlas of the Heart list.
On emotion.
But what it is around here, it means things are about to get difficult in terms of communication, potentially. So it could put somebody in an uncomfortable position. So you recognized very quickly that what you were discovering was not going to be comfortable, potentially, and the way that we were going to have to navigate as a business could get, quote unquote, sticky. So this put us in uncomfortable positions as leaders. Would you say that's correct?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I knew we had to head down an intentional path to get this remodel fully engaged. And I realized that not everyone, because of the intentionality of our values and our vision, that not everyone was going to be happy here long term. And it hurt. And I had to mourn the loss of people in preparation for that, and use your word, uncomfortable. And I knew that was going to have to happen in order to become the company that that I could see that we needed to become. And I would say that's probably one of the most painful times, because it wasn't just one moment. It was over a span of years that it was the most painful in my career. And honestly, one of the main reasons why I wanted to create this podcast is to talk about those things. So, because sometimes it requires very difficult decisions, and that difficult decision in this instance at this moment was realizing that people that had been around the company and that had deeply cared about were no longer going to be necessarily a fit in this organization. That was really painful.
You were really alone in that. You were alone in the realization. You had been observing. We had been doing the grind. You were, again, in that catbird seat looking around and going, uh-oh. or yay, depending on
Yeah,
how
it was
you look
both.
at
It was definitely both.
Right.
Yeah.
But your first move was brilliant. And I remember when it happened, I didn't think it was brilliant at the time, to be perfectly honest.
Well, thanks.
Well, it was
You've
just,
called me wise and brilliant today. I'm really liking this episode.
I'm filling up your tank.
Thank you.
But I remember this day, it was after the New Year, it was in early January, and you sat us down, you set the leaders at the time down at a table, and you said, are you willing to go on this journey with me? Things are about to get weird, for lack of a better term. I don't think you said that, but that's how I'm,
You got it.
regurgitating that. And you gave us the opportunity, which was really so wise, because you weren't going to be alone anymore. You had made the decision, if I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna have to do it with this team, these leaders, and I've got to give them the choice to come with me or not, with my full support. So you basically opened the door for us to decide in that moment. And I think you gave us time, like it wasn't like right this minute, but you said, I want you to get back to me, and I want you to tell me, are you on this journey? Are you ready to go? Because it's going to get sticky.
It was just going to be different, and with change comes stickiness. I mean, it does. And so it wasn't like I was casting this vision of things are about to get really hard around here, or at least that wasn't the intent. It was more that we're going to go in a very intentional direction.
Yes.
And that is going to be uncomfortable. And so what I was attempting to do was to give you all permission to determine if this was the journey
right
you
bus.
wanted. Yeah, the journey you wanted to be on. And it was hard. And especially with a company our size where everyone, and that's still the case. And, we're going to hit 25 people this year easily. And when I think about everyone at this company is so critical, and the leaders especially, and from a standpoint of all that you touch. And so it was, it was hard, but I look back now and I look back at the folks that, left, and for whatever reason, and it happened in different stages and forms, but it was the best for them.
Oh yeah.
And it ended up being the best for us. And I can see now that it helped. And it's why I'm so committed to a healthy culture, is because above all other metrics now, I mean, a healthy culture is the number one thing that I care about relative to this business. And the reason why is because I didn't want to be an owner or leader of a company where people aren't fully, couldn't grow and be a better version of themselves.
Sure.
Period.
Yeah.
I did not want to be in that position. I want people to want to be here because they see themselves as being part of something greater than themselves, first and foremost, and a place that they can come and do a meaningful work and grow and be better in every sense of themselves. And so that realization gave me the strength and the confidence I needed to have that conversation and the many that followed it.
So while you're working on the business alone, I I just, now that we're reflecting on this, I'm like, wow, she was alone. You're not anymore, and you know that. Were there tools that you gravitated towards? Were there role models? Let's talk about role models. Were there role models that guided you?
Oh, absolutely. And let me just clarify real quick on loneliness. I do think that leadership in several forms, leadership can be a lonely space. And I would say that I looked at my role, owner and CEO, I was definitely at times feeling lonely relative to directing this company in a direction when we were successful, but realizing we had to, for what had got us to 10 years, what was going to get us to 20 years, needed to be different. And that part was the lonely part. But I've never felt lonely in the work or, the camaraderie piece of it. So I just want to make that clarification. And, in terms of where did we turn to remodel this culture, I would say the list is long, but it started with Jim Collins, his work. And I think most people listening to this are familiar with Good to Great and all of his amazing books. His latest book, by the way, it was a republish of Beyond Entrepreneurship. and he did a 2.0. I would highly recommend that to anyone. That really shaped a lot of our vision work. Patrick Lencioni, an ideal team player. I mean, that has been, we adopted that probably early on in this process, and that really helped shape a lot of things. And then Simon Sinek as well, and his work would start with why leaders eat last. And so we also listened to podcasts. We were kind of early adopters to podcasts, I would say, definitely through with Entre Leadership. We listened to it religiously. Those were the resources early on, and now, again, the list is so much longer.
I know.
Because there's always something to hone in culture. Always. It doesn't stop.
No, it never stops. And these models really taught you sort of theoretically, philosophically, how to think about these things. But then when you needed to think about it structurally and starting that remodeling process, what did you decide were the most important areas where you needed to focus?
Well, obviously, and I touched on this earlier, but definitely providing clarity around our values and vision and how they were correlated, and to make sure that people understood their role and where we were going.
Pretty simple.
And why that was important. And the values were the beliefs that we needed to be successful at obtaining, our mission, and which is part of our vision and where we wanted to go. So it's interesting in that process that I spoke of the 2 years of really observing, I came up with 7 core values.
Yes.
And, we spent, you namely alongside me, we spent a lot of time defining those core values so that we could share them. And, we had swag made, and we did what most people do. We put it on the wall, but we didn't just put words on the wall. They were as the leaders that we followed, they were verb centric. So winning attitude was one of them. Full effort, seek the why, helpful first, all things that clearly are part of our culture. But I had started to realize that only a few of them were really being ingrained into our culture, and otherwise we were feeding it. We were talking about it, but I don't know that people were truly following it. So I did a little exercise over one of our retreats, and I gave everybody 1 minute to write our 7 core values, and not one person in the company could write all 7. You thankfully got 6 of the 7.
I did. There was just that one last one. What the heck was it?
Yeah, I think
it was one that we came up with together.
No, it was one that you heavily was instrumental.
I'm smart.
And you forgot it.
Yes.
And what that told me was that maybe the values, I'd stretched them, but it was okay because the process was really good to go through. And today we have 2 succinct core values, and I know they're working because I hear people in the organization use them freely. So it's better every day, which is part of why we started this podcast, and helpful first, which has been in part of our DNA for so long. So, and we're working together as a company to identify what our 3rd core value is going to be. So that's a fun process. So the next area I would say that I focused on and that we did together was recruitment. We were not being very intentional with our hiring, and we realized that we needed to be, because what I realized we were doing, we were so focused on aptitude.
Yes.
Talk to us about what's on that resume. Tell us about your marketing work. And I hardly even look at resumes today. And the other part of the recruiting problem is I was involved too early on.
Yes.
And
amen to that.
And
oops, I hired somebody.
Yeah, exactly. I still have a soft spot when somebody comes into this organization and says, I want to work here. I believe them, and I want to give them that opportunity. So I was a big roadblock because we weren't vetting people for things beyond Danelle, them coming in and asking Danelle for a job. So we weren't doing that. And then we were so focused on aptitude that we weren't talking about the things and again, culture, the way we do things around here. So talk to us about your communication styles or how do you deal with conflict and feedback. And so now we have a very extensive process for hiring. Even when we need someone, say a big flow of business comes in and we know we need 2 people, it's still, we do not rush the process.
No.
And I am now the last in the process of hiring, and my
First
job
is the first.
and my job is to mainly take them
And say yes.
Well, that and take them out to happy hour and see
Yes.
how they treat the wait staff. That's a big part of what we do.
It is. Yeah, it's a yes.
And then I would say the third thing is really focusing on self-knowledge and awareness. So obviously it started with me, but we began to make that a significant part of our company. And what we call it around here is, I like to call it know me, know you. Kind of sounds like a Lionel Richie song.
It does.
Say you, say me. Yeah, I shouldn't be singing this
Love
early
Lionel
on in our
Richie.
podcast. We don't want to lose people. But that is a language, because I believe that in order for you to, you've got to start with yourself. So we've got to start with our self-knowledge to become self-aware. And then that should lead to, because you're so self-aware, you then want to become aware of how others are showing up. And so we believe in, that process. And we focused a lot of effort to not only knowing ourselves, but each other as well.
So in terms of tools, so you went through this process, you had the role models, you started to recognize what was going on around here, and you started to recognize solutions to get us where we needed to go. What were the tangible things that you actually put into motion? So tools that you used, or things that sort of led you to be able to get us on the right path on this remodel.
Actually, I put visuals around our vision, and I subscribe again to the Jim Collins, that he believes that a vision is made up of core values, purpose, and a mission. And there's, again, if you're interested in knowing anything, please DM me and I'll be happy to share any of that work with you. So not only did we put words to our values and our vision, but we also put identity to it.
Yes.
So when people could see it in that framework, I think they could see, okay, this is where we're going and this is why we're going there. And so there was meaning. I would say meaning is the first that encompasses all of that. On recruitment, again, I really already talked through that process of just getting a lot more intentional, and quite frankly, getting more people in the organization involved with the interview process. That was another big step that we took that has really helped. And because what it does is different people will catch different things in interviews, and we now have a culture to where we have people that want to protect it. So by the time I get to an interview candidate, they've been vetted so thoroughly that I don't have a lot to worry about. I just need them to show up and treat, people nice, and hopefully they like my taste in wine. If not, they can have their own. But and then we put very intentional not tools, but really tools in place for people to understand how they were developing in progress, and we're aggressive with it. I mean, if you're a specialist at this company, you get progress plans every quarter. It's not an annual thing. We are very intentional about letting people know where they are. And before you get into the progress plan, because you have weekly one-on-ones, and then there's monthly meetings, CTI meetings, as we call them, continuing to improve, where they're meeting with Hannah, our director of people and operations. And so, again, very intentional about development and progress. Like, how are you doing? And so we don't make people wonder about that. We did that for a long time.
We did.
And we realized that we needed to get a lot more aggressive with giving people feedback.
Yeah. And then was there anything on the personal assessment?
Oh,
self-assessment.
Yes. So I would say that we take a lot of assessments here at DMA. But I would say, Strength Finders, DISC. I mean, how to fascinate was another one. We love Working Genius, Patrick Lencioni's brand new one. That's a new one that we've adopted. But I would say the Enneagram, and that's no surprise if you've listened to either of the first two episodes. The Enneagram was the game changer for us. And but again, we take a lot of assessments because we want to know where people are. We don't need them, and Simon Sinek warns us against this, that you don't want people to conform to a culture.
Right.
You want them to bring their uniqueness to a culture.
Right.
And then our collective behaviors as unique, special individuals is what makes a culture great. So spending the time and the resources to invest in each and every one of us knowing the most we can about ourselves and then also about each other is critical to our success, I believe, today. And so, again, the Enneagram is probably one of the cornerstones. Not probably, it is.
It is.
Cornerstone, yeah.
So if you're listening to this and you're hearing what she's saying, it's really what's happened over the last 8 years is a huge vetting process, a vetting process of what things look like around here put yourself in any situation where there's a culture. When I look around, this is what I see. I see failure when XYZ. I see success when XYZ. And then when I boil it down to the people that are here, the people who are coming in here, and the people we want to be in the future.
Right.
Do we all synergize? Are we all on this bus together, aiming towards the same end goal? And all of these tools that you just talked about, that's really a summation, is it's just a constant, like you said, communication loop, vetting loop.
Yes.
And making sure that we've got a finger on the pulse of what's going on relative to that. And if anything kind of goes sideways or gets sticky at any point in time, have heightened awareness around that.
Right.
And the Enneagram has really helped us with that.
Absolutely.
And it's the one that really stuck out of all the ones that you talk about. Why do you think the Enneagram specifically?
Because I think it's unique to all of them. The others might help you with, your strengths or your communication styles, but this one's so unique because it's literally your personality and how you relate, like who you are.
Yes.
But most importantly, in most cases, especially in the work environment, actually, I shouldn't say that. It's how you relate to other people.
That's it.
So once you understand yourself, and then you're then able to relate to others in a more healthy way. And so I think because of that, because we needed it so much around here, and it gave us permission to be who we are, but to understand why it and how we show up when we're at our best, and then also in stressful situations, for instance, so we can understand that piece of it. And our team, I feel like, because we know these things about, it doesn't matter how long you've been here or what your age is. Yeah. We're level set as an organization because we show up knowing these things about ourselves, and it helps us to be more effective as a unit.
That's right.
And so that's why I think that the Enneagram has been so instrumental.
Yeah. So for the people who are listening, like visually or in my head, when I think about 8 years ago, prior to 8 years ago, I imagine it almost as a zig and a zag in terms of how things worked, because we didn't have the Enneagram. And so I didn't know what your motivations were or what your fears were. And so I couldn't meet you halfway even, right? No. The Enneagram just opened up that window to any given person. As long as we all take the test, the assessment internally, we all know. And then now we're a zipper versus a zig and a zag. Now we're a zipper. We're working in unison together and folding into this one sort of continuous loop of communication, and all working with one another very empathetically based on what your motivations and what your fears are.
Correct.
So it's really become a huge, huge part of our DNA at DMA. And if, again, she's giving a lot of yummy information, I think, in this, and that was the goal of this particular episode. But if you don't hear one thing, hear that. Take the Enneagram. If you own a business, if you're in a marriage, if you're in a relationship, if you have grown children and you're wondering, how do we synergize better, whatever your situation is, it's truly a game changer. It's been the best thing that you did. One of the best things. I think I'm saying that a lot in this episode, but it really did. It really did help us get to where we needed to be from you said it, level set. And I'm thanking you for that.
Okay. I didn't realize that you thought that was the one thing.
It's big.
Okay.
Yeah, it's super big. Yeah. And what you really did was you empowered us, this entire team, to develop and continue to protect the company's culture. That's really what you did. Why did you do that?
I mean, I realized that because I subscribe to the belief that culture is a collective set of behaviors, it's not only mine, but it's definitely, the tone is set with me. So, but it also includes everyone here. And so I realized that ownership of the culture is within each of us. So I needed to equip and empower everyone here and continue to do so that our culture stays healthy. There's always going to be something to work on. And the more accountability that we have with this team to protect it and to nurture it, it's going to stay on course. There's always going to be something we have to adjust to, whether it's the business, we have a turn one way or the other, or new people come into the organization, or even people that are here go through seasons and changes in their lives. Those little things, because culture is essentially behavioral, how a group behaves, how we show up around here, it becomes very evident that everyone has to be in alignment relative to what we're trying to do around here. So I realized that and made it functional.
Yes, you did. You made it functional. You made it part of the business and the everyday. And so what would you say to people who are listening, if they're wondering, okay, well, what are the attributes of a functional culture? What am I looking for? What would you say? What would you describe there? Attributes.
Well, I would say that there's probably a long list, but I know that there are definitely 6 that stand out to me that, we adopted and indefinitely worked on our behalf. And I've talked to, through some of those, but just to give everyone who, are curious to have a list, is that first and foremost, clarity and ownership of the vision and values. I mean, people need to understand where the company is going and why, and they need to see themselves in that role and seeing themselves being successful on that journey. So that also would lead to accountability that's necessary to make the company and the individual successful. So I would say, again, clarity and ownership of vision and values. Second, a united leadership team. I mean, it's imperative, and we spoke to our journey with that, but people leading people must be on the same page about where we're going, because one thing I've learned about leadership, and I mentioned this in a previous episode, is that CEO is really, my job is chief repeating officer. And so the leaders of this company need to also be in that same mindset. And so a strong leadership team, and I like strong is one word, it's really unified.
Yep.
Is what needs to be happening. We can be in a meeting room and have disagreements and wrestle with decisions all day long, but we need to show up for this organization on a unified front. And that took a long time for us to get to the point to where we are today, and I'm very proud of that piece. And from there, I would say third is the right people on the bus and in the right seats. So one of the things we learned in this journey is that we had several people that were a great culture fit for this company, ambassadors of this company, but they were struggling. And oftentimes it was because they were in a role that they weren't necessarily fulfilled by or the best at. And so it's not always a culture issue. It sometimes is, is the person in the right role? That's why we love the assessment Working Genius. That helps us understand where our energy is best utilized. And so fourth, I would say commitment to continuous development and growth. And, we've talked about that as well, but the opportunity for people to be their best selves here at this company, period. And I think that goes in work and as well as being healthy-minded humans. I mean, that's when I realized that we were pouring so much into the education around the marketing and the discipline around here, but we were short on the personal development side. And once we started, we flipped that completely.
Yes.
We really started to see a difference. I would also say that one thing, the fifth on the list, would be a healthy feedback loop and really creating opportunities where you have intentional meetings, which I talked through earlier, and focus exclusively on feedback. And investing in, one of the things that we did was we invested in a survey tool. So, and we've done that within the last year. And even though we have a lot of opportunities for people at the company to get feedback through various meetings and plans, if you will, the progress plans and the development plans, we also instituted a survey tool, which really, it can be anonymous or not, but it's really helped shape my ability literally to understand where there's some, I don't know, misconceptions about certain things. And so one of the great examples is, I asked people, do we have a problem with PTO? Because we were hearing that through some exit interviews, that PTO. And so my thing was, has anyone ever been denied PTO? Because I thought, well, what are we denying people time off? But what it ended up being was the way it was structured. Mm-hmm. And then some of our time off included what we called health days. Mm-hmm. Well, those health days were proactive, and I wanted people to have time to go to the doctor and not have to use their PTO. Well, because it was abused a few times, we had forms and we had processes. Well, that's a sign of an unhealthy culture. Yeah. That meant that I didn't trust what was happening. So through the process of using our survey tool, I was able to uncover that was cumbersome and people didn't feel trusted by that. Well, the people that I didn't trust, I shouldn't say that. The people that had broken the trust around that particular benefit, they no longer worked here.
Right.
So why was that the case? But no one had told me directly that was a problem until we provided, an anonymous survey where people could leave comments and knew that I was going to be the one reading the comments. And we were able to have these incredibly healthy dialogue. Yeah. And I loved it because I could feel that they didn't have a veil. And not that someone can't come into my office. I think we have a real healthy open door, come in and tell me what you're thinking. But sometimes in those instances, there's just subject matters that's hard to sit down with the leader of the company and say, I'd really like some more PTO. And honestly, that's what ended up happening. We ended up garnering more PTO, and we did away with the ridiculous processes around wellness days, our health days. So, and the sixth thing that I would say is genuine appreciation and celebration. And I know that's where culture can kind of get can get stereotyped, that it's all the fun and the bells and whistles. But I still believe strongly in recognizing people and being appreciative and giving, being genuine with that and creating moments to where people can be recognized. And we do that in so many different ways here, but I think it's still critical. So these are the 6 things that I would give to, our listeners, is the things that we have witnessed that work for us firsthand. So,
and these are all still working things. These are things that are happening in progress. Mm-hmm. But really it's I would say over the last 2 years, we've really been active. You've been very active in implementing these things. And now we're starting to see the outcome. So here we are in 2022. What would you say? Would you say we have a strong functional culture here now?
Absolutely. Without a doubt. And I can tell you our business results are the best they've ever been. But, I think the results for me are not the business metrics matter because that's what keeps us here.
Yes.
But I know that we have a successful or a healthy, if you will, culture because of metrics that are, or moments. I don't even, they're moments like when we've had super talented, completely capable someone interviewing at the company that I was told about and very excited, but they went through several sets of interviews, and we had some newer specialists on the team, or I guess they'd been there a couple of years, but they saw some red flags relative to culture fit, and it came with conversations like, how do you, I don't know, communication styles, or how do you deal with conflict? And it wasn't at all the resume, again, relative to capabilities,
right?
Exactly what we needed. And so when someone was able to use their voice to say, I wasn't comfortable with that answer, and then when we went and explored it more, that's when I know that there's protection of the culture, because they knew that person was a bad person, but the way that person explained how they expected communication or feedback, it's just not how it works around here.
Right.
So, and I think if I remember correctly, is they didn't like frequent feedback, and boy, because you're getting it all the time around here. So that's a moment. I can give you another great example of Jordan Confer, who is a manager here at the company, our communications manager, but she's also the self-appointed producer of this podcast. So when I first cast the vision of the podcast back in November, again, just the vision of this is what I'd like to see us do. Let's think about it. And I think we were going to come back the next week and make a decision on it. She marched right into my office and she said, I want us to do this, and I want to lead this effort. I want to be involved. That to me says, okay, this person, by the way, she's extremely talented on our team, growing in every sense of the word. So she has a full book of work. But she was like, I'll do whatever it takes above and beyond to do this. That to me is a culture marker. Now, we don't want her working 20 extra hours a week for this, and we make sure that that's not the case. But at the same time, she didn't stop at allowing barriers like that to do what she felt in her heart. And so that's another great example. And when you, like I said earlier, when you hear the core values of the company being used in literally casual conversations, you know you got the core values right. And when they're, I love it, and it was just brought up in our team talk this week, is that we love to talk about how our friends and our family are like, oh, because we bring up the Enneagram a lot. And people we joke about it, like our friends are like, oh no, here comes the Enneagram lecture.
Here she comes. Here comes the 7.
Here comes the the talk that we're going to get. So it's moments like that. And again, these are just a few, but when I started to really pay attention and start to see the results of the company, I started to also see these other markers of success or moments of success. And I'd like to also share that something that really helped me, to not only the leaders listening to this, but the people who want to be a more positive contributor to the cultures that you are involved with. I love the questions that are asked in the Culture Renovation book by Kevin Oakes. And these are just some of the questions that kind of guide the health of a healthy culture. Is if a team member, and this is how we instituted, but if a team member works at DMA the next 2 years, will they be healthier as a result? Will they be a healthier person because they work here in every sense of the word? And will they be better parents, friends, partners because they joined our organization, is another question I am continuously asking to make sure that we're on the right track. Another one is, do employees feel like they're serving a bigger mission or purpose being a part of this team? And can they see if and how they are improving the lives of others each and every day? And we talk about that intentionally a lot. So if we have a successful case study because of a promotion that we've done, or some of, any marketing activity, we intentionally tie that back to, you realize because you got these particular results on that particular social media campaign that more people were inspired to potentially eat more fresh produce or in good for you foods. And so again, being very intentional about how our work is making the world a better place. And so I think those are things that I would encourage you to not only think about yourself, but certainly leaders who are working on culture remodeling, which, by the way, is a constant. So.
It's a constant, and we're still in it. It's never going to stop.
Well, it's never going to stop.
Yeah.
Anybody who owns a home, or quite frankly, a car or any asset, there's always something that probably needs to be done,
fixed.
even if it's just a car wash.
Yeah.
It may not need new tires all the time, but it might just need a little polishing.
scrub.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right. And that's exactly what we intend to do, continue to scrub.
Yep.
This has been a very rich conversation today.
Good.
Lots of meaty things for people to walk away with. And I think it's important that, one, that we say we're still on this journey.
Yes.
And it's never ending. And so no matter where you are in the process, if you're listening, that this is something that you're either starting, you're in the middle of, or you're going to continue to do. Mm-hmm. And it's the right thing to do. And so know that in the show notes, there are going to be references
Absolutely.
to the things and the resources that Danelle has talked about today and elevated for us. So the intention is that your path to success is easier than it was for Danelle in DMA.
In DMA, for sure. And that's what we're hoping to accomplish. So with that, I'm excited about today's music moment. I'm stealing I'm going to change what you had in there as your plan for our music moment.
Oh boy.
And the reason why is because we're talking about remodeling culture, and I couldn't help but think of cover songs.
Okay, I like that correlation.
Yeah, something that is existing and making it either new again or different somehow. So cover songs are the theme today.
And you seem to be into cover songs lately. Like this is just a theme.
Well, that's a good observation. Yeah, I would say my Spotify would agree with you.
Yeah.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I love cover songs that when the artist takes the original and makes it's so unique that you can barely even recognize it at first or until you maybe get into lyrics that you recognize. In fact, Mackie and I were on a road trip recently, and she played a song for me from a new show she liked. And she played this song and said, "Guess what this is? I know you know the song." And it took me a while, or she may have ended up having to tell me. No, I think I ended up because I knew the lyrics so well. But it was Don't Be Cruel by Elvis Presley. But it was so different and so unique from the original. And just a little background on Don't Be Cruel. First of all, that was written in 1956 and recorded by Elvis. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's 2 minutes long, which I didn't realize, and very upbeat. Very upbeat, and to the point to where I didn't even realize it was a sad song. And this particular song by Billy Swan that she pointed out is a 4-minute, completely rearranged version of Don't Be Cruel. I mean, the instrumentals, the production of it is so incredible. And then when she told me that he did it in 1974, I couldn't believe it.
You thought it had been recorded now.
Oh, recent. I thought it, because she said it was for a new show she's watching. So I completely thought it was for something current.
That's cool.
So anyway, it blew me away. So I would please go listen to it again. Billy Swan's Don't Be Cruel. I would love to know what you all think about that particular song if you haven't heard it before. Okay, so I'm going to throw something to you.
Woo.
I need to know what your top 4 or 5 cover songs are, right off the top of your head.
Ooh, okay. All right, this isn't easy, so I'm just going to go off the top of my head here. Okay. All right, here I go. Wild Horses by the Sundays, originally recorded by the Rolling Stones.
Okay.
Of course, Landslide by the Dixie Chicks, originally recorded by Fleetwood Mac.
Yes. Good. Yum.
One that's surfacing for me because we listen to it a lot in our household is Ryan Adams' version of Wonderwall, which is much like the one that you just talked about, the Don't Be Cruel. Slowed down, stretched out, beautiful. Mm-hmm. I'm a huge fan of The Cure, and Adele does a beautiful rendition of Love Song, which is one of my favorite Cure songs. And then this is for the 5th. I'm going to say Hallelujah. Hallelujah by Jeff Buckley.
Okay.
It's a really, really good version.
All right.
Highly recommend.
Okay. So interesting. I love them all. I'm going to.
Do we overlap?
No, we don't overlap much. But we do overlap on one. I have on my top of my list is Brandi Carlile's version of Hallelujah.
That's a good one.
And I wouldn't have said that until I listened to Broken Horses,
Yes.
her audiobook. Again, she has a book out, but definitely do the audio version.
Yes.
When she talks about why she recorded Hallelujah, and her version is just impeccable, but I do like Jeff's version. So that's on my list. But there was one song that you didn't have on there that I'm a little disappointed by.
I know what
the
it
greatest
is.
cover song of all time.
I know what you think it is. I know what it is.
Okay, well then say it.
Okay, it's I Will Always Love You.
Okay, thank you.
But the problem with it is I do love Whitney Houston.
Version.
Yes.
Which is the cover
and
song.
Her. Yes.
Okay.
But I love Dolly's. I think I'm just a traditionalist in that way. And
that's fine.
It was in The Best Little Whorehouse. It was the song at the end. And I loved that song and listened to that album 100 times as a child at least.
Okay. So you couldn't see the incredible
appreciate it.
Artistry.
Love it.
Okay.
But Dolly's song is my favorite.
Well, of course. I get that.
So it's not.
But in terms of
my sixth.
an art in terms of an artist taking a song and making it their own.
She killed it.
I mean, so that has to be on my list because that's the way
Okay.
I'm kind of characterizing.
That's your number 2.
Well, I don't know that in any
It's
order.
in there.
It's in my top 5.
Okay.
For sure. And then I would say I love Chris Stapleton and Tennessee
Yummy.
Whiskey, originally recorded by David Allan Coe back in the day, and then again by George Jones.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. A friend of mine said that Stapleton's voice sounds like elixir for the soul, and I love that. So I would also choose Dolly Parton's cover of The Story by Brandi Carlile. She doesn't do a lot of cover. Well, Dolly does a lot of covers religiously in bluegrass, but she writes her own music for the most part, so there's not a lot of mainstream. But Dolly's version of The Story is incredible, slowed down. It's so beautiful. In fact, one of our team members used that as the song that they walked down their wedding to, so that was really cool. And then I would say in that vein, Carrie Underwood's "How Great Thou Art." I mean, there's so many different versions of that, and that hymn probably goes back, I have no clue how long, but I love her version of "How Great Thou Art." So those are some of my tops. I'd have to stop there because I could keep going for days and days.
We
But
probably
what
both
I
could.
really would love for our listeners to share their top cover songs, and how fun if maybe we put together a fun Spotify playlist.
I love it. Let's do it. We'll
right.
get Jessie on it. She's our social media manager for the podcast. So if you're listening to this and you want to play, go to Instagram for Self Smarter Podcast or our Facebook page and just tell us what your favorite cover songs are right now or for your whole life. We'd love to hear them. However
Absolutely.
many you want to share, we'll listen. That'll be fun.
That's great.
Okay.
Yay.
Yay. So it's a wrap.
Okay.
And what a wonderful, rich topic we've uncovered today. Thank you, Janelle, for being vulnerable and
Absolutely.
sharing that. It's been 8 years, but to wrap it up in an hour is kind of a feat.
Yeah, a little bit.
So let's meet again, same time next week.
Absolutely.
All right. And we thank you all for listening and for coming back and for just trusting us with your time. Until then, we send you into the world with grateful hearts.
As always, you can connect with us on Instagram and Facebook at Self Smarter Podcast. You can also leave a rating or review if you enjoyed what you heard today. Not only does this mean so much to us, but it also helps other leaders and future leaders find our community. Thank you for taking time out of your day to join us in becoming Self Smarter. This podcast is produced by Snacks Media, and music is from a free platform. Well, that is until Brandi Carlile reaches out to us to write the original score for our podcast. Friends, have a great rest of your day.